In this video, I would like to read 1 Kings 19 and following in English and in Hebrew, along with a running commentary. As we're looking at this text, we're looking at Elijah fleeing from Jezebel. So then, verse 3 reads, speaking of his flight, Vatishlah Izebo Malach El Eliyahu Lemor. Ko Ya'asun Elohim B'chol Yosifun Ki Ha'et Mahad Asim Et Nafshecha Kenefesh Ahad Mehem. So Jezebel sent a message and said to Elijah, So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow. The ones that Elijah, that what had occurred on Mount Carmel, Elijah's defeat of the uh, priests and worshippers of Baal. So then, as we read on, we're told in the next verse, when he saw that, he arose and went for his life. Vayar vayakam vayelek et nafsho. And he came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. Vayavo el Be'er Sheva, asher lihudah, and left his servant there. Vayanah et Na'aro Sham. Verse 4. Buhu halak, and he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. Buhu halak bamidbar derek yom, and came and sat under a broom tree. Vayavo vayeshev tachat rotem achat, and he requested for himself that he might die. Vayish'al et nafsho lamut, and he said, It is enough now, O Lord, take my life. Vayomer rovata Adonai kach nafshi, for I am not better than my fathers. Ki lo tov anochi me avotai. And so in verse 5, he lay down and slept under a broom tree. Vayishkav vayishan tachat rotem achad, and behold, an angel touched him and said unto him, Arise and eat. Vayhene ze malach nogea bo, vayomer lo kum aho. And he looked, and behold, there was in his hand a cake baked on hot stones. Vayabet vayhene mera'ashotav ugat retzafim, and a cruse of oil. V'tzapachat mayim. And so he ate and did drink, and laid himself down again. V'yochel v'yashav v'yishkav. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time and touched him, saying, verse 7 then, Vayashav malach Adonai shanit vayigach bo vayomer, Arise and eat, because the journey is too long for you. Kumacho ki rav memacha ha-darak. And so he arose and did eat and drink. Vayakam vayochal vayishta, vayishteh, I should say. And he did eat and drink and went in the strength of that meal for 40 days. The Arba'im Laila Ad, let me just go back a minute here. He rose, he ate, and then went Arba'im Yom, Arba'im Laila, went for 40 days and 40 nights Ad Har Ha-Elohim Horeb, unto the Mount Horeb, the mountain of God. Let me just stop there and read a little bit of commentary on what we read. Notice Elijah fled for his life. After the contest on Mount Carmel, Elijah had entered the city of Jezreel full of exhilaration over the day's events and hope for the future of the northern kingdom. But a message from the angry queen vowing to make him pay speedily for his defeat of her priests changed his mood at once from joy to depression and fear. Why did she send him a message instead of having him seized or even put to death, maybe by her hired murderers? Probably either she did not trust the temper of the common people, or else she had no such power and conceivably had been told by Ahab to control herself and to do no harm to the servant of the Lord. We may speculate that she did the next best thing to give him such a fear as to send him into hiding, perhaps permanently. The threat produced the intended effect, for Elijah's face suddenly failed him. He lost his nerve and fled out of the northern kingdom into the southernmost part of Judah at Beersheba, at the edge of the desert. Even there, he either felt uneasy lest he be attacked by the queen's agents, or else he felt an overpowering need for solitude, for reflection, for enlightenment, for prayer, and a renewing of his spirit. Perhaps he felt both. Dismissing his servant, he decided to seek refuge in the mountains further south. Why did Elijah suffer the loss of confidence? It appears that his sudden reversal of mental states arose possibly from an overconfidence inspired by what had happened on Mount Carmel and by the momentary enthusiasm of the Israelites who were witnesses there. Might have been an overconfidence that had taken over Elijah. Had he remained steadfast and immovable, the impression of the events and of his part in them in the mind of Ahab and the people generally might have been solidified and followed by positive results. Had he had been thrust into the center stage, and basically he had heard the applause, but the applause died out. He had been left to himself in the morning light of the next day with Jezebel's message at hand and no visible support against the danger that was implicit. The prophet could not face the future with a martyr's spirit of acceptance of whatever God might bring, and so he fled away to Beersheba. It's interesting as we think about life. Often in ministry, we've had those experiences, all of us have had similar experiences where you felt that God has blessed maybe your teaching or your preaching, but then all of a sudden things change and you begin to feel down and you wonder if really you had helped anyone or done anything that was helpful. And so I think every minister goes through similar moments of discouragement. So he sat down under a broom tree. Elijah went on from Beersheba a day's journey and seated under that broom tree. The broom bush is a common desert shrub or bush which grows up to 10 or 12 feet and casts a shade for man to rest under. He said, "Take away my life." So in serious depression, Elijah asked God to take his life. He realizes that he is going to die someday, like his fathers, so why not now? So we're told the angel of the Lord touched him, and Elijah's gracious God did not lose sight of his runaway servant, but watched over him and miraculously ministered to his wants. The angel is called the angel of the Lord in verse 7. It's good to know that the Lord even sees us in times of discouragement, when we are downtrodden or when we are discouraged. Often in ministry, pastors tell me today that they can become very discouraged with people's indifference to the Word of God, for example. So, but the angel of the Lord here, it's interesting, since in the scriptures this title includes divinity, like in Judges 13:17 to 23. It may be that this was the second person of the Trinity in pre-incarnate condition who had come to minister to Elijah. And it's wonderful to know that the Lord ministers to his servants, pastors and teachers and all believers when they go through times of discouragement. So he went to Mount Horeb. After the angel had fed the prophet, a second time he went into Horeb, traveling 40 days and nights without food. Horeb and Sinai are names given in Old Testament passages for the same mountain. Traditionally, Sinai Horeb is regarded as being the peak called Jebel Musa in the mountains south in the south apex of the triangularly shaped Sinai Peninsula. So he goes here. However, other locations, though, might have been nominated and supported by scholars, uh, notably a mountain west of Kadesh Barnea. While the traditional site fits the wilderness journey of Israel well, one cannot be finally decisive about the exact location, though. In any case, in the solitude, God appears to instruct Elijah. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" was a searching question addressed to one who had been called to an urgent mission to Israel. And here he lay, far away from where he should be. So Elijah's attempt at defense is seen in verse 10. It is interesting to note that the mountain of the Lord in the south, the opposite direction of the mountain of Baal, Mount Nephon, which was in the north. So he's gone to the opposite direction of Baal's mountain. And the Lord appears to him and says literally, "What are you doing here, Elijah? You're not carrying out the ministry that I've called you to do." And notice it says, "And he came here into a cave and lodged there, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said to him, what are you doing here? Vayavo Sham el hamechava vayanan Sham, vahine davar Adonai elav, vayomer lo ma lacha, oh, Eliyahu." And he said, "I have been very jealous for the Lord of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and slain your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away." You can see how he feels he's the only one left. And we often have that feeling, I think, in ministry. Vayomer kano kineti le'Adonai Elohai Tzabaoth ki azavu veritacha bani Yisrael et mizbachotecha harasu va'et neviyecha haragu v'harav v'hivaterani levadi vayavakshu et nafshi lekachta. That is, even I only am left. Interesting. I'm the only one left, he's saying. So the Lord said to him, go forth and stand upon the mountain before the Lord. Vayomer tzech amata bahar lifnei Adonai. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountain. Notice the Lord's going to now appear to him. And notice how he appears to Elijah. We're told that Hene Adonai over beruach gedolah, a strong wind, v'chazak mefarek harim, and it broke the mountains to pieces, v'meshaber selaim, and broke the rocks, I should say, to pieces before the Lord, lifnei Adonai. But the Lord was not in the wind. Lo varuach Adonai, he was not in the wind. And then, after the wind was an earthquake. The ahar haruach ra'ash. Lo vara'as Adonai. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire. The ahar ha-ra'ash esh. But the Lord was not in the fire. Lo va'esh Adonai. And after the fire, though, this is beautiful. The ahad ha'esh kol demama daka. After the fire, a still small voice. In other words, it's the small voice that often God speaks. So often, I think today we think noise is the main thing in church. That the more noise we can make, the louder the band can get, the better. But that's not what we're learning here. The Lord was in a still, small voice. And I think he still speaks to us often in a still, small voice. So it was so when Elijah heard it that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Vayehi kishmoa Eliyahu vayalet panav be'adarto, and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave, and behold, there came a voice unto him and said, What are you doing here, Elijah? Vahene elav kol vayomer malacha fo Eliyahu. What are you doing here? And he said, I have been very zealous for the Lord. Vayomer kano kineti le'Adonai, the God of hosts, Elohei Tzebaoth, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant. They've thrown down your altars and slain your prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. In other words, I'm the only one left, he's saying. Vayomer kano kineti le'Adonai Elohei Tzebaoth ki azabu Veritacha b'nei Yisrael, et misbachotecha harasu v'et neviecha haragu b'charev Ivater ani levado. I only am left. Vayavakshu et nafshi lekakta. And they are seeking my soul to take it. And then I love the answer that the Lord gives. He's going to go on to talk about how there's many others that have not forsaken the Lord. But he feels that he is the only one left. So it's interesting as we go through this. It's an awesome exhibition of the Lord's divine power. He made himself aware by touching the heart. On this occasion, there was a strong wind, an earthquake, and a fire. But as we've seen, the Lord was not in any of these. This was unlike Sinai, where the Lord spoke out of the smoke and fire. Here, his voice was literally the sound of thin silence, the sound of a light or a soft whisper. God then ordered Elijah to return north and carry forward the Lord's work. I think I'll stop there. He's going to tell him to anoint Hazael and so forth. So let me just stop there. But it's interesting when we read this text, it encourages us to keep on keeping on, even during times of discouragement in ministry. And every minister of the Lord has gone through times of discouragement. And yet the Lord's saying, hey, get back at your work. And you don't need to feel you're the only one left. There's many others that haven't bowed their knee to Baal. And so we need to listen to that still, small voice that the Lord wants to speak to us. And I would say it's good to get alone with the Lord in his word, in prayer, to hear that still voice that he wants to share with us.